Welcome to FWL's NEA division. Here we go on race number 9 as we visit the Miami International Circuit. I forgot the name. Sorry. Ugh, that's frustrating for me. Oh well. I think I started a little too early the broadcast, which kind of sucks in my opinion. However, we will make it work. We'll make it work. What did I need to be on top of NEA standings? Okay, so last week we were at the glorious circuit of Austria where Mr. Gecko won. Oh no, not Mr. Gecko. I'm sorry. Who won? Miss China. Miss driver standings. Instructor. Okay, so leading the driver standings currently, we have Mr. Gecko in the McLaren. We have in P2 Julian, and in P3 we have Blackbird. So hopefully we see an interesting race between our top 3 finishers. Our victor in Austria was... no clue how to say that. So we'll go with Toxic. And let's get all of our stuff enabled. As we have Julian on their outlap, followed by Star Defender. And who else is coming out on their outlap? We have Blackbird. We have... both the Red Bulls are out. The Aston is out. We'll see who else comes out for their outlap starting now. And we have the Aston Martin into the wall of Gas Girl. On the outlap too. Pushed a little too hard on the outlap. We have the Mercedes just cruising along. We have the Alpine who just went past, I'd assume, the Aston Martin. And let's see who starts their flying lap first. I believe it should be the Red Bull. And as we go on board with the Red Bull who starts their first flying lap of the day, here we go, down into turn 1. Nice on the brakes. Car really fighting. Sporting the good old Max Verstappen Miami helmet from last season. We have the Alpine who's also on the lap. As we'll stay on board with the Red Bull and just watch them finish up their lap. Hopefully it's a clean lap. And it looks like Star is bailing out of their lap. Didn't catch what went wrong there. But it does look like Star bailed out of their lap. We have the Alpine who's coming in pretty close. And the Mercedes who's also on a lap. The Mercedes of Blackbird. That's probably what is hindering Stars. And Julian puts the fastest lap up with a 1:27.6. Blackbird follows it up with a 1:28.1. And we have West in P3 with a 1:28.4. We have the other Alpine who's finishing up their lap, seeing where they're going to put it on the timing sheets. It won't be good enough for pole. It won't be good enough for anywhere between the top 3, but it's good enough for 4th, and that's currently where they're at. We have the Alfa Romeo out on a lap, and the Alfa Romeo is coming down the long back straight here. And as we cross the line, will it be good enough for a top 3 position? No, it'll be good enough for 4th. And our current gap to the leader is, in 2nd place, a 2/10 gap. In 3rd place, a 4/10 gap, almost 5/10. In 4th place, we have a 6/10 gap. And in 7th place, we have a 7/10 gap. Let's see who else is on the lap. And Mark finishes up their lap. And that, they're starting up a lap right now. Doesn't look like they're starting now. On cooldown. Gasco, who's out on the lap, we're right on board with the Aston Martin. We'll see how this goes for him. As we still have multiple drivers who still haven't put out a lap yet. We have Echo in the Ferrari this week. On their outlap, we have Lil D1, whose home race this should be. We have Mr. Heat Gang, who still hasn't set out a lap. However, this is Heat's first race in the NEA division all season, so we might see something special from them. We have Sin, who also still hasn't put out a lap, and we have Shax in the McLaren, who still also has not put out a lap. So currently we are still waiting on 7 drivers to put out a lap. Down the long back straight. Nice stop. Good on throttle. Here we go down into the... And that's good enough for P6 on the board. Let's see, who else do we have on a lap? We have Echo, who's out on their lap. Followed close behind by the other Ferrari of Heat. We have both the Ferraris right here, ready to set in laps. We got down the long back straight. Both of the Ferraris pushing with everything they have. Echo is giving Mr. Heat Gang a nice helping of the clear air. And down we go to the finish line. And what will it be good enough for? It'll be good enough for P5 on the road for Echo. Heat Gang will put it into the pits. And Low D1, here he comes down. Low D, here he comes. As we have Gasco, who retires. We have Low D1, who comes down to the finish line and puts it into P9. We have Star, who still hasn't put out a lap yet. We have Shax, who still hasn't done a lap. And we have Heat, who still has not done a lap yet.
change of 133 feet. From the starting line, our drivers climbed a gradient of over 11% to the first corner.
And we have star defender who retires from qualifying.
Prior to the Circuit of America, there have been 9 other circuits in the US, the Prix Grand Prix. The most recent was the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which was used between 2000 and 2007. Kimi Raikkonen won the 2018 Grand Prix after 114 race win drought, the longest drought in F1 at the time.
So we have Heat who comes out on to start their outlap. We have Dance who's on their outlap already, and who should be starting up their lap. We have Gecko who's on their lap, currently going through the chicane. Coming down the long back straight, we're right on board with Gecko to see where they put it. We also have the Mercedes, but Gecko goes fastest in the second sector. We go down into down the back straight. Heavy braking zone right here. As we have also the Mercedes who's out on the lap as well. So we go round the last turn, bring it down to the start finish line. And that's good enough for P4. Does not advance. We have the Mercedes though, who taps the wall. And taps the wall again. Assuming the Mercedes will bring it into the pits. We have West in the Red Bull, who's out on a lap at this current moment in time. Actually, I believe they just got done with a lap because they're only at 32% on their ERS. Who else do we have that is currently out on a lap? Everybody is in the pits. We have somebody who's coming out of the pits. Who was that? I believe it was an Alpine. Yes, it was. It was the Alpine of Mark. As we have Heat Gang who starts up their lap. Here we go. As we ride on board with Mr. Heat Gang. And Mr. Heat Gang runs it super wide. But continues to press on with the lap. So, we'll see how this goes. There's just a tire in the middle of the track, apparently. That's good to know. We have Sin, who's on an outlap and is in P3, which I didn't catch until right now. So our top is only divided by less than, our top 4 is only divided by less than a second. We have Roka in the Haas, who's on an outlap. We have Shax, who's also on an outlap. They waited until almost the very end. Here we go. We have Heat, who's coming down to cross the line, and Heat puts it up in P5. Beautiful job from Heat. It looks like nobody has been able to really challenge that 127.0 from Blackbird. Blackbird with a phenomenal lap. Blackbird's going to try to take that lap away from himself. We have, who else is on their outlap? We have Roka, who's going to start their first flying lap. Shall we ride on board with the Haas? I believe we should. Here we go. But we also have Sin, who's starting their lap. And we have Shax. No, not Shax. We have a McLaren who's still on their outlap. beautiful stuff from our top 5. He's only separated by a second. He's only separated by 8 tenths. And he couldn't get a stop in time, and that is Roka's flying lap over. As we have Sin, who's going at it. There's still just a soft tire in the middle of the track, but here we go. As we go down the long back straight, we have Shax, who's in Sector 2 at the moment. We have the Mercedes, who's also about to get into Sector 2. We have Julian, who's in Sector 1 at this current moment in time. And we have Sin, who's about to finish up their lap. Here we go, down into the heavy braking zone. Coming towards the start-finish line. Will this lap be good enough for pole? We'll find out right now. And it is not good enough for pole, but it is good enough for second place by just 0.05 of a second. Beautiful stuff from our top 5 at this current moment. We have Black Bear, who's coming down, Blackbird, who's coming down the back straight, who puts the fastest Sector 2 of this entire session at this current moment. Will Blackbird be able to improve this lap? And Shax goes up to P9 with their lap. And here we go to the start. And it is a better lap. It's a 1:26.7 now. Beautiful job from Blackbird to improve that gap ahead. We have Sin, who's now 3 tenths away. And we have Julian, who's 9 tenths away. And we have Julian, who's going to go out for another lap. Here we go. This could be the decider for some of these drivers. We have MP3 Gecko, who's 7 tenths away now. And who doesn't have enough time to go for another lap. Now we'll see if our top 3 can remain unchallenged up there with these last couple of laps coming in. As we have Roka, who's still on their, who just finished their lap, and it's good enough for a P13. We have Lil D1, who's starting up a lap right now. We have Mark, who's in the middle of the track in the chicane area. That's a dangerous spot to be in. And we have Sin, who qualifying is over. So now we'll see how everything gets affected right now as we come down to the line. We have Heat, who's looking to finish up their lap right now. And we have West, who's also trying to finish up a lap. Here we go. Dents, who messed it up somewhere and is in the wall. We have Lil D, who comes down, across the line. It was an invalidated lap. We have Roka, who also has an invalidated lap. We have Heat, who still hasn't finished up their lap. Here comes Heat. What can Heat give us? Heat will give us P3 with a 1:27.2. And our top 3 at the end of quali is Blackbird, Sin, Mr. Heat Game. And that rounds out qualifying for the Miami Grand Prix. And the 5 lights are on, and it's lights out, and away we go. Looks like our leader got a great start. As coming down into the first turn, we have Sin, who launches an attack going through the first turn. We're right on board with Sin. Here we go. A Star Defender gets a penalty for severe collision with Shax. Here we go, down into the first couple of turns, through the S's, and it is Sin who just snatches the lead away from Blackbird. Here we go, down into Sector 2, we have Blackbird, who's under threat from the Ferrari behind of Mr. Heat Gang. Beautiful stuff coming into the first part of the first lap of the race. As we have Blackbird, who's going to try to mount a move. And let's see what our current position changes are. So we have Sin, who has flopped up from P1 to P2 to P1. We have Star, who's our biggest gainer at the moment, with 6 positions gained. And this is beautiful stuff coming into our first lap. Top 5 separated by nothing, as we have a little bit of contact between Heat Gang and Blackbird. So much, in fact, that the top 5 are separated by nothing. Our top 6 are just separated by nothing. West hasn't moved. Down, gets ahead of the Mercedes. We have the McLaren of Gecko, who's hunting that Alpine, who's also hunting that Ferrari. And Sin, who's just playing it nice and beautifully, but has also wasted so much ERS trying to pull away. No DRS until the next lap. But here we go, as we have multiple drivers just dumping into the ERS. We have Lil D1 and the other Alfa Romeo of Dents, who are just going at it so far. We have a move. It is the McLaren who tried to make a move on the Alpine, who failed to make a move, who gets all squared up out of shape, and the Red Bull takes advantage of that, and through goes the Red Bull of West. Now the Mercedes is going to have a move down on the McLaren and gets ahead of the McLaren. There's beautiful stuff coming in. We have the Ferrari, who's like right behind. Beautiful stuff from our top 7. Our top 8, technically. Separated by nothing. We have Heat, who's finally within that magical 1 second of West in the Red Bull. And Heat puts the fastest lap of a 1:30. Beautiful stuff. As Heat is expanding that gap and has dropped West from the DRS ring. And that leaves West vulnerable to Julian, as DRS will be enabled this lap. And as we watch that Scarlet Red Ferrari open up the DRS wing, we also watch the Alpine open up the DRS wing and the Mercedes. We have Gasker with a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. We have Heat, who's chasing the rear wing of that AlphaTauri Senate. Beautiful stuff from our top 3. As we ride on board with Heat, he's going to be sizing up a move. Coming down, here we go. Heat goes for the move. Should have the move done. Heat has the move done. Gets ahead of the AlphaTauri, as the AlphaTauri is now under threat by the Red Bull. And here comes the Red Bull. The AlphaTauri is going to fight it back. Here we go, down into turn 1. It's the AlphaTauri ahead of Heat. And Heat's going to try to fight this one back. But here comes the Red Bull of West. West is going to try to make a move. Coming down into the first DRS zone. Almost a little bit of contact between the two. And the Alpine and the Mercedes are joining right alongside. A Star Defender is getting chased down by Echo, and the McLaren is chasing down the Mercedes. Beautiful stuff coming in to these couple of laps. As we have Heat, who's going to go for another move, tries to hang around the outside. Here we go, around the outside. Heat already has the move done, but here comes the Red Bull. The Red Bull's going down, going to attempt the outside line. Can the Red Bull get it done? And the AlphaTauri has to go through the runoff. Gets a 3-second time penalty for cutting the corner. And Sin with another 5-second penalty. And Sin with a 5-second penalty for cutting the corner and gaining an advantage. As we have Julian, who tries to make a move on the Mercedes but can't get the move quite done, as that brings the McLaren right behind them, and Heat Gang is disappearing away from West, dropping him out of that 1-second gap, so West can't get the DRS. And that means we have Sin, who's all over the back of that Red Bull, coming down into the DRS zone. Will we see a move? Here we go. DRS is open. Here comes Sin as we right on board. Who gets the move done before the corner. And the Red Bull slots into place. We have Julian, who's going to try to make another move. We have a virtual safety car, however. Did not catch what that was. Guessing debris on track is what caused the virtual. As it is lap 5 of this race, and we have Heat Gang ahead of Sin, ahead of Weston, ahead of Blackbird, and ahead of Julian. And that is our current top 5. As I believe it was the DNF from Gasco that prompted the VSC. We have multiple drivers who came into the pits. Hold up. We have West, who's in the pits, who gets ahead of Blackbird in the pits. We have Julian. We have somebody who got a... We have Star Defender who got a penalty for speeding under safety car. We have Mark, who gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. We have a retirement from Dens. And we have Shax, who's also coming out the pit. As we have a safety car on our hands. And those who have not pit are going to be under massive threat from the safety car. So those who opted to stay out, actually, Heat might have a chance to pit and still come out ahead. We'll see right now. No, he will not have a chance, but he will have a chance to pit or just stay out, since those soft tires I do not see lasting till the end of this race. Everybody will have to pit again. But it will be nice. We have a 2-stop from Rogue. We have multiple time penalties. Let's see what our penalties are. We have Sin with a 3-second time penalty. We have Star Defender with a 5-second time penalty, and we have Mark with a 5-second penalty. As we have our race leader who comes into the pits to bolts on a brand new set of tires. I don't know what tires will be going on that car. As we have West, who rounds the final corner as he is still in the pits. He exiting the pits Heat exiting their box, coming out to the pit. Does Heat get ahead? Did the strat work out for Heat? It did work out for Heat as Heat gets ahead of West and keeps the position under safety car. Star Defender with another 5-second penalty for speeding under the pit, for speeding in the pit lane. We have Heat who's dropped down to third under VSC, under safety. As we do have an apology to Mr. Blackbird. I wonder what happened there. I didn't catch that one. We have Heat ahead of West, ahead of Julian under safety car. Be no damage on the Mercedes. This will bunch up the pack very nicely, and we might be able to see some more fighting going on as we are on lap 7 of this race with a safety car. And if you're just joining us now, we have lost Dense, Gas Girl, and we have had an amazing first couple of laps with amazing fighting, as Heat Gang has been our winners so far out through all this fighting. Very interesting race so far. Excited to see how it continues to play out. He will be playing the long run, who bolted on the medium tires. Let's see what tire everyone bolted on from our current safety car. So we have Heat on the hard tire, we have West on the mediums, we have both the Red Bulls on the mediums, we have the Alpines, one on the mediums, one on the hards. We have both the Ferraris, not both. We have one Ferrari on the hards, we have one on the mediums who will be looking to try to make up places. We have the Mercedes who is currently on the medium tires. We have the two McLarens who are both on the softs. You'd figure Shax would have stopped under the safety car to get off those soft tires. However, it does not seem to be the case. We have Lil D1, whose home race this is, and it's going pretty well as they're in the points, up into P6 with 2 laps on their current hard tires. We have Sin who bolted on the mediums. We have the Haas who bolted on the mediums as well. Okay. And stops, we have Shax who still has not made a stop. We have 3 2-stoppers. And safety car comes in this lap. If Shax wanted to make that stop, it can't happen no more. Shax has to pray another safety car comes out. When will Heat go? We'll find out right now. I believe Heat might go right after the corner, as Heat backs up the pack. And we have Roca and Star who are just out of joining. Just not joining the back of the grid. And here we go. He has taken off. He caught West napping. No, he didn't catch nobody napping. Here we go, down into the first turn. We have West ahead of Julian, ahead of Blackbird. Beautiful stuff. We have Shax who did pit It has that has a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. As we ride on board with Julian, who's going to try a move on West, most likely down this stretch. We have Star, who gets ahead of Mark, and Mark's going to try to fight that one back. We have West, who looks to be sizing a move. Are they close enough? No, they are not. Will they try to switch? Still not close enough. It has a little bit of contact with the Alpine right to the left. We have Mark, who drops down again and is under fire by the Haas. We have Star Defender with a 3-second penalty for track infringements. As we ride on board with the Alpine and the Mercedes, or as we ride on board with the Mercedes, we have the Red Bull who gets ahead. We have the Mercedes who's going to launch a move on the Alpine, who gets the car stopped, who gets ahead and is fighting for the lead of this race. Here we go. Down to the start finish line. We have the Mercedes ahead of the Red Bull. The Red Bull inches ahead as the Mercedes goes around the outside. Can he hang on to it? Yes, he can. And it's the Mercedes ahead of the Red Bull, ahead of the Alpine. And the McLaren and the Ferrari, who are just sitting back waiting for the DRS. As we have the Red Bull who's going to go for it. Cuts off the Alpine. Almost contact between the two. Red Bull who's going to try to hang this one. Can't do it. Here we go. Down into the chicane. It's a little wobbly out of the chicane. All good though. As we go down the back straight. Very close to the pack is. We have Mark, who's hunting the back of Roca. We have Sin, who gets ahead of Heat Gang. And we have DRS that gets enabled. We have Mark, who gets ahead. DRS is finally enabled. We have the Mercedes ahead of the Red Bull. Beautiful stuff. Our championship leader is currently in P4. Our constructors champions. I don't know where they are at. I can verify this right now. Our Constructors Championship is in P12 and P4. Here we go. Down Sector 2. The DRS is open. The Red Bull gets alongside. Will end up getting ahead before the corner. Will the Mercedes try a move? Mercedes can't get a move. We ride on board with the Mercedes. Still trying desperately to get ahead of that Red Bull. And we're right on board with the Mercedes, with the DRS. Starting up the move, gets ahead of the Red Bull. And before the corner is done, it is the Mercedes ahead of the Red Bull. And the Alpine is just sitting there, stalking the back of them. Heat Gang gets all out of shape, but Heat Gang is on the preferable tires, since these medium tires probably will not last to the end of the race. And if they do, they'll be barely hanging on. We have Sin, who's all over the back of the McLaren. The Alpine, who's all over the back of the Red Bull. And Sin, who's making a move on the McLaren, who's gonna try to hang it round the inside. Gets the move done. Beautiful job from the Alpine, from the AlphaTauri. Here comes the Alpine, who's still stalking the back of that Red Bull. It must be pretty frustrating just watching the back of it. And that Red Bull must be getting frustrated just stalking the back of the Mercedes. Here we go. The Red Bull goes back down for a move, lunges it down the inside. The Mercedes hangs around the outside line, continues to hang around the place, and keeps the place from the Red Bull. Beautiful stuff coming into these laps. 3-second time penalty for track infringements to Mr. Heat Gang, without the Alpine who's just saving the ERS and hasn't been able to make a move yet. As the Red Bull is charging down the inside, gets on the brakes nice. The Mercedes still hangs around the outside, continues to get it, and it looks to be the Red Bull ahead of the Mercedes, but the Mercedes is going to fight it back, as we'll watch it down from the POV of the Alpine, and it is the Mercedes ahead of the Red Bull again. We have the Red Bull who's chasing the Mercedes again. Here we go. And the Mercedes will lunge it down the inside. Takes the inside, but the Red Bull has just that nicer clean line. The Red Bull gets all out of shape. That leaves room for the Mercedes to go right through. And the Mercedes gets ahead again. As we have Sin, who's all over the back of the Alpine now, and looks to be trying to make a move. The Red Bull's going to be making a move on the Mercedes. The Mercedes is under threat from the Alpine. Contact between the two. Contact between a bunch. Huge contact. As West gets spun round, the Mercedes gets tagged. The Alpine gets tagged, and we have the Alpine in first. Now we have the AlphaTauri in first, as we have Gecko who gets put into play here. Good points for the Constructors' Championship for McLaren. Good points for Gecko, who's leading the Drivers' Championship at this current moment in time. We have Blackbird, who's going to keep trying this. Got all up out of shape. We have West, who's down into P8 at this current moment, who's probably done with their race. Star Defender, who's getting all up out of shape in P7. P6, we have Heat, who's hunting the back of the Alfa Romeo. As we have Heat, who's most likely going to get ahead. We have the McLaren, who goes down on Sin, who's trying to get ahead of Sin, who can't get ahead of Sin, and gets ahead of Sin going into the chicane. As we have Heat, who gets ahead of Lil D. We have Blackbird, who still is hunting down, who's now hunting down the Alpine. And we have Mark, who in the Alpine, who gets ahead of Star Defender. And we have a virtual safety car. And we have Sin, who gets ahead of the McLaren. We have Sin, who brings it into the pits. We have the McLaren, who brings it into the pits. Who else brings it into the pits? We have Black Bear, who will take track position. We have Julian, who also brings it into the pits. We have Heat, who brings it into the pits. Lil D brings it into the pits. West also brings it into the pits. Who else brings it into the pits? 5-second time penalty for Roca for speeding in the pit lane. We have Shax, who also brings it into the pits. Star Defense, Mark, Roke, and that will be our complete pit stops. As it is now a full safety car with Shax, who gets another 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane again. We have Blackbird, who continues to lead this race, ahead of Gecko, who is our current championship leader, who is in a great position for McLaren for great points to the constructors team. We have Julian and Mark, who are also in great positions for their team for nice points in the constructors championship. Excuse me, that was not very professional. And we have Heat in P6, we have Lil D in P5, and Sin in P4. Alright. We are on lap 16 out of 20 with our safety car. If you're just not joining us, we have had a ton of action in the first couple of laps. And it is currently, well, the safety car comes in this lap, so I don't have much time to explain. But we have Blackbird ahead of ahead of Gecko, ahead of Julian. Great fights have been going on this entire race. Some beautiful stuff. And here we go, down into the first turn, as we have Mercedes ahead. We have Star, who makes a move on the Alpine. We have a yellow sector in sector 1. We have somebody who's spun. We have the Alpine who's round. We have Roca, who's going to fight the Alpine now. As we have Gecko, who made the smart move, went onto the soft tires for the last couple of laps. We have another yellow in sector 1, no clue what it was. We have 4 wide. We have the McLaren, who gets ahead of the Mercedes. We have the AlphaTauri, who gets ahead of the Mercedes. We have the Alfa Romeo making moves. We have Mark, who DNFs. We have so much weaving going on just to break the toe on the AlphaTauri. Blackbird, we have Blackbird, who's gonna try to catch up. Didn't hit under the safety car, which might have cost him. We have the AlphaTauri who's stalking the back. We have the Alpine who gets ahead of the Mercedes. It's all so very close in these last couple of laps. As we continue to watch our race leaders at this current moment, who have swapped positions so many times and have provided such an interesting race this entire race. We have had so much action going on this race, so many different race leaders. As we enter the penultimate lap of this race, we have the McLaren of Gecko ahead of Sin in the AlphaTauri. And if I'm not wrong, DRS should be enabled this lap. So we can see some good, really good fighting coming in as we head down into the first DRS zone. And here comes the AlphaTauri, who's going to be trying to make a move. Either that or we'll play it safe. One of the two will happen. As we go round the outside with the AlphaTauri. No, plays it safe. Probably just didn't have enough. Shax gets ahead. Lil D gets spun. As we have yellow flags, we have the Mercedes of Blackbird in the wall, who retires from this race. The one who has led this race for most of the laps has retired on the penultimate lap of this race. Tragic to see. As we have Julian, who gets ahead of Sin, and Sin is gonna fight this back, gets right back ahead, has been dropped out of the DRS. It looks like this will go the way of Gecko as we go on to the final lap of this race. Star Defender gets ahead of Shax, and it's crazy. Shax fights it back, gets ahead of Star Defender, and Star Defender is gonna try to fight this back going into the second turn. Star Defender gets ahead again, and it is Shax. It is Star Defender ahead of Shax, ahead of Echo, as we have Senex, who runs it really wide and gets dropped out of the DRS again, and who has a huge snap, and that'll put the Alpine all over the back. As Shax is going to try to fight this one back, but Echo's right behind. And Echo has used all of their ERS trying to get this done. The Alpine gets ahead. The McLaren gets ahead. And I believe we'll have Heat Gang, who will try to overtake West coming out. As we have the Alpine, who gets all out of shape. And the AlphaTauri, who's going to fight back on the Alpine. Here we go down the long back straight. It'll be the Alpine without DRS, and it'll be the AlphaTauri who's going to fight it back, coming down into the last turn. And it looks like it'll have gone the way of Gecko, who's done everything they needed to do today to win the Miami Grand Prix, as we have Sin, who brings it in to second place, but with multiple penalties drops down to fourth. We have Julian, who brings it into second, who brings it home in third, but now up in the second with penalties being accounted for. We have West, who brings it onto the podium into P3. We have Heat, who remains in P5. We have Echo, who remains P6, Star Defender in P7, and give a round of applause to our race leader, Gecko. beautiful stuff from our racers here tonight in NEA. This has been fun. I'm Roach. I will see you guys tomorrow with NEA2's round number 9 in Miami.